here we have a governing agency that handles everything automotive. They don't tell the customer any of this.
No, of course not.
We're the ones that have to tell them, and it's written in their manuals.
Yeah.
The shop is responsible for educating the customer. Well,
Yeah.
no shit. And then if the customer files a complaint, that bureau or that agency comes out to the shop and acts as if the shop is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the JD Mechanic Podcast. I'm here with a good friend of mine. We all love him, Oscar Gomez. Oscar, it's good to see you again, buddy.
Likewise, man. I appreciate you guys having me. And like you were saying, bro, the heat here in this hellhole of California is freaking crazy, man.
Yeah. What's it like right there right now?
Right now it's 102. Yesterday we hit 110.
Yeah.
Nice and dry, so no matter where you go, you're just dying. Yeah, man. So and then the funny part is that we hit summer, so our utility bills usually go up by like 3 times. So I'll probably be expecting like a $600-700 electricity bill this month.
See, in my shop, like we forget because a lot of shops still don't have air conditioning. Right. You probably it's standard, I think, in California, right? That most of them by now have some form of, like
not
the better
really,
places.
man.
Really?
Well, some of the better places, yeah. I know a lot of the dealerships do, but independents, not at all. That's something that I'm actually working on with my landlord to get the approval to get AC unit put in the back.
Yeah.
Because man, it's brutal. You got a car that's on inside the shop.
Yes.
And plus the heat inside it's just freaking crazy.
Yeah, we had the way our building is set up, we have no airflow really coming in it most of the time. And like in the afternoon, when the sun goes over the building and starts to shine into the bays, it gets really hot and no airflow, no breeze, and no air. Now you can go sit out. He doesn't mind. My boss is awesome. You want to go sit in the office for 5-10 minutes, cool back off. That's cool, right? Like that's fine. The waiting room, but the shop. So I mean, the last couple weeks, it's been pretty hard to function, harder than I can ever remember. And I don't care what anybody says. As you get older, you feel it more for sure.
Oh hell yeah, man, definitely.
And because you look and you get acclimated to us too, because the guys that are doing construction just down the road from us, they're out there, they got pants on, and they're like and heavy work boots. And I'm working. I haven't worn work pants since May. Like I've been in shorts.
Yeah, same.
It's like but they're out there at the job site doing construction in pants, and and I'm just like, how do y'all do that? Like it's just and standing still in dirt and dust and traffic going by on asphalt. No, thank you.
Yeah, bro.
So I'm glad it's nice there. It's calling for rain here for the weekend, so which is going to put a damper on my plans, obviously fishing. But if I go out and it starts to rain, I'll stay out. If it's raining when I wake up, I don't go. But if I go out,
gotcha. Yeah,
because then once you're wet, right? But if it's just like, oh, I don't want to get wet if I don't have to. But if you're out there and it's raining, you just stay out. It's just the way it goes. So
definitely, man.
So you've been kind of, I don't want to say MIA because you and I have talked a little bit, and I've seen you around, but you kind of you didn't have a vacation. That wouldn't be the right word to say, but kind of fill everybody in on what's new with you. Where you've been and what's happening?
Been lurking in the shadows, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, automotive wise, man, everything's been going fantastic. Been having a lot of extra time to work on case studies and testing different scan tools. I'm blessed, a couple of companies sent out some scan tools for me to work with and play around with. So that's definitely giving me some beneficial time to educate, learn for myself. And then I'm also working on 2 new classes that hopefully next year I can present somewhere that I get an opportunity to do so. Yeah. But everything was going fantastic, man. I was having a great obviously I'm nowhere near some of the top trainers that we all know, and I was at that first step, man, of going up that ladder, and April 9th everything kind of came collapsing down. And as I was mentioning a little bit of sorry, it's just as I was mentioning earlier, man, this is something that I would never want anybody, even my worst enemy, to go through.
Hmm.
The impact that it has on you as a person, on your family, it's just freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And for me, just being an educator, and one side of me that a lot of people don't know is, I'm an expert consultant and witness for a lot of automotive cases here in the state of California.
Yeah.
So, I remember one time being told that sooner or later I was going to have a target on my back, and didn't think it was going to really happen or happen that
Right.
soon. And what ended up happening is, my name got involved with this whole situation, which unfortunately I can't really get into many details.
Right.
One, because it's still ongoing, and two, because there really isn't any. I was actually speaking to my legal team this morning, because I got I have two attorneys and an investigator on it, and evidence has been trickled down so small, in such small increments over these last 4 or 5 months, and what has zero relevance to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as they've all been saying, it's, pretty soon you will be exonerated from everything.
Hmm.
And once that does happen, my biggest thing is I want to educate others on being careful about it. I know some guys are doing a lot of stuff that, in our industry, it seems normal, but
Hmm.
unfortunately to a lot of government agencies, it's not.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of educators out there that are fantastic geniuses, way smarter than I am, but unfortunately, some of the stuff they do is frowned upon by the government, by Big
Yeah.
Brother. So
So to put it in perspective for people that might not be as familiar with who and what Oscar is about, Oscar is an emissions inspector in the state of California,
okay.
right? And Oscar gets a little bit of ribbon for being from California because like it's to some people it's the greatest state in the world, place in the world, and to other people we don't necessarily align with a lot of what California is about. Oscar has always been an outstanding professional in because you'll have the detractors about smog testing is both like is useless, doesn't do anything, blah 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 blah, right?
Right.
All that kind of stuff. And Oscar, I've never heard him ever once say such a thing. I have said such things. I mean, Oscar has never been. So Oscar is an upstanding standout of like the program and an instructor of what it all means, how to do it. Like Oscar, how many people have you trained now? Do you think to like do state emissions testing, repairs, all that kind of stuff? How many students have passed through?
uh Man, almost tens of thousands by
Yeah, I
now.
was going to say.
Yeah, and some of them have came back. I've actually done some posts on some of them
Mhm.
who've gone through my program and then came back, worked for me as educators. Now they're training out, throughout the US. So it's that's the reason why I love what I do, because I'm
Yeah,
able to see these guys come in on day one, and then progressively we roll them into becoming a badass technician.
yeah,
And then afterwards, man, you just see them start scaling up, and it's just freaking amazing.
yeah,
And some of the things that I always talk about, like five gas analysis, a lot of people say, well, I'm not an emission state. It's like, well, luckily we are, and we're able to use that. So it's
yeah.
not just because you're not an emission state not to use it, but it's a
Right.
great freaking diagnostic tool, man.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, for
Yes,
sure.
sir.
So, I mean, the idea that they would put a target on the back of somebody uh, that's actually what's the word I'm trying to think? A proponent of the system, a proponent of the program, somebody who educates people and trains them on how to follow the program, to me is just bunk. Like, what is it with people where we see guys that like do modifications and sell stuff that's not carb compliant,
Right.
right? And they ship it all over the continent, and not nobody gets like, because there has been some cases and people have been cracked down, but I mean that stuff is like doesn't nobody seems to blink an eye at that. So when they told me about it started to trickle down with Oscar, I'm like, there's no way he's out there rigging the system so the cars that shouldn't be out there driving around would be. That's not what Oscar would be about, right?
Not
And
at all.
so, can you, and like I before we got on, I could tell you, it's something that's really, really, it's weighed on you, right? Like
Yeah.
it's your reputation, it's somewhat of your business of going to the next step of not just like working for this, but like it's an obstacle for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It
What
affects
do you,
everything, man.
yeah. Well, can you kind of tell us, without going into details, can you kind of tell us what it's all based on?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Uh, I don't know. Neither one of my two attorneys know. The investigator doesn't know. And we're still in the same spot that we were after April 9th.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on evidence. Their usual statement is, it's in the evidence. Look at the evidence. We've looked at the evidence.
Right.
There's no evidence. So
Yeah.
sorry. And it's just, we just keep going around in that circle. Like, okay, well, where is it? What is
Mhm.
it? And it's just not there.
Yeah.
So it's a big burden, man. I have two daughters, and originally when all this happened, if I would just go outside, go to the store, they would go berserk. You
Mhm.
know, it's not every day that you have to walk out of your home uh, protecting your two kids when there's assault rifles pointing at your children, um, and then they forcefully, arrest you in front of your children,
Yeah.
and they take your children without you being present to a different room and begin to interrogate your kids. If you've never been through that, I hope you never have to.
Right.
And the worst part about it is there's nothing that can be done about it.
Yeah.
So it's terrifying. It's terrible. And I just hope that once all this is done and over with, that everybody understands that there's bigger people above us that can definitely make your life what they
Yeah.
want it to be. So we all just got to be careful, do our best to follow whatever we're doing, especially in my case where I had two legal representatives who were guiding me even before any of this stuff happened. And they're even jaw dropped saying, I don't understand why this is going on. So
The thing with the daughters, like your daughters are not old enough that they would know anything. You
not
know
at
what
all.
I mean? Like that's just I could almost see it if we're talking like in a shop situation, and it's like, okay, so you're a father and there's a son, and they sequester, and what did your dad do, or that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's not this what's going on here at all.
No,
Not
not at all.
like your daughters don't. I mean, would they really understand? Like they're not going to understand emissions testing and stuff. It's just dad works on cars.
Yeah,
Like
that's exactly what they say, man. It's like, why? And if I knew, babe, I would definitely tell you.
so they all of this has happened, and they can't even show you a case or of an example of what you might have done. That's
No.
just ridiculous. It's
Yeah,
so
man.
was our new to kind of draw a comparison now. We have we're bringing in, like we've always had to do when you buy a car up here, you have to do a safety inspection on the car, right? Now,
Right.
if you buy it from the dealer, it's assumed it's done, so on and so forth. So, our new safety inspections now are literally hooked up to a government program, and like the car's on the rack, pictures are being taken with your tablet that goes directly to the government office, and all that good stuff gets recorded and everything. And
Right.
by God, does that ever slow down the process,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then it's just like, because when we did e-testing, so when we did drive clean up here in Ontario, and I was not an inspector, I didn't bother. We had a camera that would look over the car
Okay.
that was hooked up the same thing to the mainframe or whatever, and they would watch. So you'd want to see the license plate, want to see the VIN number, and then you put it on a dyno, you did through a 2-step idle, and then a loaded test against the dyno wheels, and that was it. That's all they were measuring, right?
Okay.
And like yeah, there was some stuff got done trickery wise for sure. Because sometimes the camera didn't catch that maybe they put, supposedly, I didn't see it firsthand, but guys would joke about it and go, oh, you just put the wand in the car running in the bay next to you, right? Or stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean, Oscar? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
so, and I'm not condoning it, but I mean, it was such a, because we would see cars that were like, came in barely running,
right.
right? Misfiring like crazy. I can remember there was an old Intrepid with a 3.5 and the intake gasket's blown right out, sitting there surging and everything. I'm like, this thing will never pass. And the guy pulls it in, runs it through. Sure enough, it passes. And he touched nothing under the hood to make it run better. He just did the test as he was supposed to.
Right.
So it didn't do a lick to try and eliminate, because the way it would work is if it failed, everybody hung a cat on it, right? And
Yeah.
what that did is shoot the price of cats up. So all of a sudden it was like, okay, the cat's $1,000. They were letting everybody go with a $500 conditional. That was the government way of saying. So everybody, you would just write it up for $500. Everybody would get their conditional, and they would go. And what that meant is in 2 more years, you couldn't test that car again. That meant that car had to either be fixed to pass in 2 years, or you brought in a different car. But it never really solved the problem, right? Of emissions cars, emitting cars, polluting cars being still on the road. They still were on the road. You know how it is. People, it's like, if all of a sudden you say the proper repair is $1,500, but for $500 I'll allow you to keep driving, what's everybody going to do?
$500 for the $500, yeah.
Right? Like, why would you not? So the system had holes. They brought back now. It feels, what I'm trying to say is this new way of doing safety inspections feels eerily similar to that.
Okay.
Take pictures of the brake pads to show the thickness and if they pass or fail. And we normally be doing a really good safety inspection in about 90 minutes. Now it's taken 3 hours.
Holy cow. That sounds similar to our program, just a change, a transition. So here in California, we have one called the brake and lamp inspection.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I teach that class. I have that license, and the way it's outlined in the state manual, it's a 3-hour inspection. And it's funny because I've had students that come in because they're like, dude, I can't pass the state test. With that license, we're required to retake both exams every 4 years, which we thought was terrible. So they just finally made some changes on that. But when the guys were coming in, they were saying like, dude, I can't pass this test. Yeah. And then when they would go to my class and they're like, dude, why is it a 3-hour inspection? It's like, that is because you've been doing this wrong the whole time. Yeah. Its car needs to be racked. You got to mic rotors. If it has run out, you got to measure run out. And just doing it by myself, it takes me 2 hours, 45 minutes or so. And people then call and like $300 for an inspection. It's like, you know what it entails? And the reason why that reaction was there's shops everywhere that are charging $80 because they don't even take wheels off. That's right. So and then you get a shop who's actually doing the inspection and people trip out on you because you're actually doing it correctly because you're not trying to get in trouble. That's and you're charging for that, and then people get freaking pissed off, which is crazy. And the worst part about it is here we have a governing agency that handles everything automotive. They don't tell the customer any of this.
No, of course not.
We're the ones that have to tell them, and it's written in their manuals. The shop is responsible for educating the customer. Well, no shit. And then if the customer files a complaint, that bureau or that agency comes out to the shop and acts as if the shop is the bad guy. Like, come on, man. You gotta you gotta pick sides here. You're having us educate the customer. That's your responsibility. Yet we're the ones responsible if the customer gets upset for your policies. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
But
and I don't know if you guys have that issue up there.
Well, it's very similar and what makes it worse is, so I'll give you what the scenario that plays out a lot of the time is that somebody goes and buys a car as is, not safety, right? And then they go, okay, the guy, of course, the seller told me it only needed 3 things, X, Y, and Z, right? It needed 4 tires and, it needed 4 tires and a front brake job. And there was a license plate bulb out. Okay. You rack the car, you go through it. There's a control arm bushing that's shot. There's a ball joint that's bad. There's a tie rod. All the stuff that other people don't know about when they sell the car, because those are the 3 things they know for sure when they're driving it. or got told
Right.
on the last inspection when they decide to get rid of this heap that, I need, and that's it. Then the poor person never ever spends $200 to get an inspection done, a pre-purchase. No way, that would be ridiculous. It's $200 I'm not paying you guys that to tell me the same thing this seller told me. And then we get the car, and it's like it needs $3,000-$4,000 worth of work,
Yep.
and then we're the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And that's just
Yeah.
doing our inspections. If you want to do the inspection now to make it legal to like plate it, put it on the road, that's when this 3-hour inspection comes into play. And now,
Gotcha.
which before we just followed the same process we'd always done. But now with the camera coming in, it slows because you can't just take a bunch of pictures, a bunch of video, and then upload. Literally, when you go through the inspection, you go to the checklist until you get your video loaded for the ball joint that's got loose. You stick the, dial indicator on, and you can't go to the next part of the inspection.
No way.
So it almost
Wow.
takes two people and a lot, and then the tablet's big and bulky, and you're trying to hold a brake pad in this big tablet and push on the button. And, I'm waiting for the day we drop the $1,000 tablet. It's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Damn.
So a lot of shops, from what I've heard around me, Oscar, immediately are like, they've doubled and tripled the price of what they're doing these safeties cost wise, which is just infuriating to people. And then some other shops are going to be like, I'm just not going to bother doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. Like, I'll check your car out, tell you what it needs to pass the safety. But as in terms of like getting signed up for the government to allow me to write you it, not worth it. Not going to do it.
Well, let me ask you guys this. If you pass it today, what happens if it fails the next inspection? Does that affect you as a technician?
So right now we had one where we didn't pass it. We inspected it, and the guy says, okay, I'm going to go do that all myself. Cool story, bro. You've got 10 days to bring it back.
Damn. So the reason I asked you that is because here in California, we have a thing called the STAR program.
Mm-hmm.
And what the STAR program is it holds me accountable as a technician for your car 2 years later.
Yeah.
So if I do your emissions inspection today and it passes and it doesn't pass 2 years later,
right,
that means that I did something to make your car pass.
2 years later.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because cars never develop a failure within
Not at all.
people
keep them pristine. They do all their proper maintenance and all that fun stuff.
Oh,
yeah, man.
It's not looking real inviting for me to want to move to California. Not even close.
Not at all, bro. Yeah. That program, that was actually something that I was working with a law firm on prior to all of this occurring, and that we were going to file some legal documentation to try to get that program either removed or updated, because the way that I presented it was, if you go to a cardiologist and get an EKG and then you die in the freaking parking lot, how the hell is it the cardiologist responsible for that?
Right.
How am I responsible for whatever the person does to their car after they leave my shop? That doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever.
Even if they don't do anything to it, even if the oxygen sensor the next morning, the heater element fails, and the O2 tomorrow is not working properly, guess what? The car passed yesterday and today it might not pass. You're not responsible. You didn't make the 2 years. Like we used to say with the safety inspections, we used to tell the customers, so this is good for 30 days. And then if you don't safety the car, inspect it, whatever, within 30 days, you're going to have to get another inspection done. And then so the way we kind of always approached it was, if it was right on the borderline,
right,
fail it. Because you don't know how that person's going to drive in 30 days. So tread depths and brake pads or brake thicknesses, whatever, was two key things for me. I didn't care. If the brakes were minimal, I'm calling it. Regardless of whatever the spec says for this passes. And I would say, because if you bring it in if you end up in a court of law, they don't care what the spec is. They're going to say to you, you're the expert, not the customer. Did you feel that it was as safe as it could be? No, I didn't. But it was within the eyes of the law, it was legal. Okay, did you feel like it was safe as good? No, then you are liable. Thank you. Sign here, go off to jail, get your bracelets put on, done.
Yep.
So I've had a lot of issues with some former employers because I'm like, I'm not signing that safety. The tires are dry rotted. The tires are, 330 seconds. You can pass a tire with 330 seconds. I don't care. That's just stupid to me. In Canada, in winter, a tire with 330 seconds at its is not a safe tire. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Right.
So I'm not passing that car. And they would always say, you have to pass it. I don't have to pass it. Somebody else can sign it. You sign right here then. You put your name on the bottom that's saying you think it's safe. Cool. It's you that's got all the risk. Because if something happens to me and we lose our license up here,
Right.
what is there? You're unemployable. Nobody will hire you now to do anything but change oil, right? Or put tires on. That's it. That's the two things. Right? So, people that want to, it's not to get too far away from the emissions testing thing, but it's the same thing. Like, I don't have to sign it. There's other techs out there. There's other shops out there that will sign it. I'm not putting my butt on the line. And people never understood it. They didn't get it. It's like, I got employers because I've sat through after I did one at the dealership, and it was a used car and everything passed, but it had some play in the tie rod end. It had, the tires were allowable, and we had just gotten a new used car manager, and he was like every used car manager, just a slime ball.
Get it through. We got to make money, right?
So the car sold. The lady bought it. She went to her mechanic. Her mechanic racks the car, shows her everything that should have been done before the car was sold to her. So of course she contacts the dealer. The dealer then brings, me into the office. MTO, which is Ministry of Transport of Ontario, right, from a governing body, gets involved. I sit through the whole meeting with him, go through the whole inspection of the car. They can't find anything that is not within the allowable amount, right? So nothing. There was nothing. I'm free and clear. But he keeps saying to me, the thing that stuck in my mind is he said, well, you could have failed that tie rod and we'd have backed you. But you can't fail that tie rod because it's not above whatever 3,000ths of deflection, right? It was a hypothetical number. So what they're saying is, in a roundabout way, it's still on you.
Right.
And I was just like, this is the stupidest thing in the world. I don't ever want to go through this again. So I became like a hard ass about it. I'm not signing that customer's car as being safe. Sorry. Right. Like, and we had a Nissan Murano in that needs a transmission, and you could just about put your fist through the subframe. I'm sorry. That subframe has to be removed for the tranny to come out in that particular car, right?
Right.
The customer wants it welded. Can I weld it so that it'll be secure? Yeah, you bet I can. Am I going to? Hell no. No. Not putting my career, my ability to earn a living, I'm not putting it on the line for this rust bucket old piece of trash. I'm not doing it. Sorry. Yeah. And people get so like, oh, you're not a mechanic anymore. You don't want to fix anything. It's got nothing to do with that. I can cobble and jerry rig and whatever you want to call it to get stuff by. I mean, I made my living doing that on the side of the road, getting trucks running again so they could get to where they were going. I know how to make things work. You're not going to tell me that something that should be in the junkyard and you want to put a tranny in it. I'll tell you that the other work that needs to get done. You're not going to con me, I'm sorry, into patching a subframe, because just my luck, if there's an accident and something happens,
you're 100% liable.
I just put a Jesus, him talking to the cop. Here it is on the side of the road, upside down, right? Because the rest of the thing isn't safe. I just put a tranny in that, and they go, I wonder if I should walk over and look at that tranny job. And then they walk over and somebody sees my welding on a subframe, hypothetically. Like, I know we're reaching, but scenario wise, but I mean, look at where the situation you're in. Yeah, that's reaching pretty far, right?
Oh yeah, bro. Hell yeah.
So it's not a situation of I need to put my career on the line for one particular car. It's not happening. And I feel like you're the same way.
Yeah, man, I'm on the same boat. Yeah. One of the reasons why I think that way is when I started doing a lot of this expert consulting, I would see the unfairnesses. So just like you were mentioning, one situation that comes to mind was early on in my career as an expert, and I had just actually got licensed as an instructor here in the state of California. I was helping with a case where a very, very reputable transmission shop got an undercover vehicle from the state of California. The vehicle came into the shop and they induced a failure of a spark plug wire, right? Mm-hmm. Shop checks it. Shop sells plugs and wires. State says, no, it needed one wire. no plugs, one wire. We show up to trial, and I get presented this, and I'm like, "Are you fucking?" I'm sorry, excuse my language, but I was like, "Are
Yes.
you
Okay.
fucking kidding me?" So I start looking over all the stuff, and I'm speaking to the attorney. I was like, "Dude, this is standard procedure in
Yeah.
any shop. I don't care who the hell you are or where the hell you are. You call any auto parts, they will not sell you
I
one
was just
spark
gonna
plug
say
wire."
that. How do you buy one wire?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I told him, so what is like a shop supposed to do? Replace the one and then hand the rest over to the customer and be like, hey, when you need these, you can put them on your car. Like, what? That does not make any sense. So
No.
um he quickly, he kind of thought on his feet, and we put some stuff together in the actual witness room. We go into the court, and he speaks to the other side, the state's party, and we got that dismissed actually on the spot, because
Right.
it's like, how the hell are you going
Yeah.
to hold a shop accountable because they replaced not one but the whole set of wires and plugs? I was like, that's general maintenance.
Yeah.
If we had one wire that was bad, I'm going to replace them all. If I'm
Yeah.
already there, I'm going to replace your plugs.
Right.
And as you were mentioning earlier, they'll say, oh, we're the state, we'll back you up. No, they won't.
No.
On our state, if you read their manual, it says their mission statement is to protect the consumer of the state of
Yeah. Of
California.
course it is.
And,
Yeah.
we're not consumers there. We have zero protection.
That's right.
um, I actually worked on another case also, where a body shop replaced a radiator support, and they marked it incorrectly on the work order. So they were coming after that shop, taking both licenses and the shop's livelihood, simply because they didn't put that it was a used unit. They marked
Right.
it as new. It's an oversight, right?
Yeah.
And they had a hard on for it. The worst part about that one is they actually sent the car to that shop's competition across the street to have them tear it down. And then the state went over to that shop to then look at the information or the report. And then they use that report to go after them legally. It's like, come on, dude. Like,
So of
you
course, and the
really,
shop across the street's just going to be rubbing their hands together, going, "I can't wait to
yep.
get involved in this case, right? Because watch what I'm going to be able to do. Like, if there's ever a chance you're going to step on the competition's neck, it's right there. You know?
Exactly. It's like, holy cow. And like with everything, there has been some where, when I looked at it, I would tell the attorney, like, yeah, these guys deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some where I'd be like, yeah, they kind of screwed up, but these guys just need some training, and so I was on that boat.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the attorneys would be like, what do you think on this one? I'd read it over and then call them, this guy's done. Like, I wouldn't want that guy working on my car, and he shouldn't be working on people in the community's cars. I think it's time for him to find another career.
Yeah.
Right. And then I had one where I worked on, and the tech misdiagnosed a bad fuel injector. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, that guy just needs more training.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, he's done, get him out of this industry. It's like, no, he just needs some training. And the shop and the tech actually agreed to it. We did some training for him, and judge liked that, and actually just gave them some probation time, and let them continue. So it's one of those fine lines, but the government just really sees it more as like, you did something wrong, you're done. Like, dude, people sometimes need chances. These guys that work for the state, they need training, because sometimes
Yes.
the stuff they say, right, is like, dude, are you freaking serious? Each one of them has their own rules, their own laws, their own regulations. No matter what's written, that's not what it means. It means what I say. And it's like, come on, man. So yeah, it's a tough one, especially here. We have the customer, we got to keep happy. We got the state of California, we got to keep happy. And then we got to keep both of them happy to keep running. And
Yeah.
then everybody gets a piece of the pie. State, county, city, they all get a piece of whatever you make. So you're just fingers crossed that at the end of the day you can at least have a profit.
And I'm sure these people, this is going to lead into my next rant that's going to talk about hypocrisy within people that actually enforce this shit. Because for sure that those people, when they go home to their own vehicles, Their own vehicles are not pristine, absolutely picture perfect, emissions compliant. Like they never drove to work with a check engine light on in their life, right? They immediately parked it and had it towed in case it was. That's BS. Do you know how
Yeah.
many cop cars go around with a check engine light on? You know how many ambulances go around with a check engine light on or safety
Oh yeah.
infractions? Don't give me that crap. I got to tell you, this is a story that just kind of. So at my last place of employment, Ministry of Transport, MTO, because it was a bus line, inspected all the buses, right? Once a year,
Okay.
they would come in and they would go through. They would pick, like, not all the buses, but they'd pick normally the 4 oldest ones off the lot, and we would do an inspection with them, stand by. And they would come in, and they used it as a shop because we were one of the only shops around that actually could lift a motor coach off the ground in our area. So they
Oh
didn't have
wow.
to walk under a pit, didn't have to get on a creeper. I'll tell you this, and this is no flack. If anybody from MTO, if you want to listen, you want to get upset, please don't. They're all old, white hair, right? It's their bulletproof vests on and gun at the belt. And I'm thinking, you're MTO infraction officers. Now, when you go to the bigger cities, there's a reason for that. But here, where I live, cool, whatever. So they show up in the morning. They show up in 2 vehicles, the trainee and the trainer, right? And they get out, they park the vehicles in the parking lot. They run all day long, air conditioning running, nobody in them.
Yep.
That's good for the emissions environment, right? And MTO and everything else, but whatever. It's not their money, right? I mean, it's all our taxpayers. So anyway, and they come in and we go through the inspections on the buses, and he's kind of like showing them and asking questions, all that kind of stuff. And anything I worked on was not part of what they were inspecting, different weight class, different certification. But at the end of the day, the idea of it all is just there's so much hypocrisy there, because it's like they go home and they take their uniform off and they are just like you and I, just citizens.
Yeah.
And their car, I'm sure, probably, needs brakes or needs some tires or needs, probably a tune up. They're not doing it,
Right.
but they're going out every day and pulling people over and saying, and now I'm not against safety inspections. Lucas and I have had a conversation about that when they talk about in some of the states how they're a joke, right? I'm for them. I think it should be. When you see some of the crap rolls around up here where rust is such a factor, Brian Pollock talks about all the time, we should be inspecting cars every 2 years. No doubt about it, just to make sure that they're safe, because otherwise people won't do it. They will not put tires on. They will not fix the brakes until the car's unsafe. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
Now,
especially if my family's on the road.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our industry's got such a bad rap and is full of enough shady characters that we probably can't, we couldn't be tasked with organizing and doing that ourselves as an industry. So the government has to be involved in that, right?
Yeah.
And it sucks because somebody, they'll say, well, I'm not, just like my rant, I'm not going to sign that, right? But we see the stuff, and it's like, I mean, I've driven lots of cars. I had one the other day at a Ford 500. I drove it it was there for a different complaint. Drove it, did the inspection. It drove fine, no problems. Pull the wheels off to do the inspection. The left rear brakes, there's no pad left. The caliper had locked up at some point, burnt the pads right off it. Like, it didn't have a brake issue. So if I'd have never been looking at that car, I'd have never known that there was something wrong. It didn't squeal, it didn't pull, it didn't pulsate, nothing, zero. Now, we sold the guy brakes. Cool, right? We got the thing resolved. But my point is that, like, these people that bring cars in and just check them over, nobody road tests the car beforehand, and then says immediately, comes out to the customer with, like, I'm sorry, your brakes are at, 5 mil. You really should get brakes done. Did you road test the car? How does the car perform? Does it, like, that's the part that just drives me nuts, is like trying to sell just based off of how something looks. Like, I get it, the customer might, what's normal to them could be ghastly unsafe. Right. But if nobody's doing the proper inspections and the proper, actually using the car the way it's meant to be used, you can't really go out to the customer now and start to tell them that, like, we're the experts and their car is definitely unsafe. I'm not good with that. I have a problem with us handling ourselves. But this industry is full of people that do that.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere. A lot of times, sadly, manufacturers are the big ones that tend to do that. And I get it, they got to make their money, but we got to be honest, man. And being honest with customers, they can smell BS from a mile away. And as long as we can show them evidence, pictures and measurements, and and then give them our recommendation, and then, you know, guide them into what needs to be done, people would be a lot happier.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of times too, what ends up happening that starts creating that problem is like like you were saying, they'll come out right away. Hey, you need this, this, and this, and this. You're looking at $1,800, right? Then they
Mhm.
go to Joe's garage down the way. Joe's like, I don't know how to really charge. I'll do it for $600, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what that dealership was trying to take advantage of me. So then that starts creating that whole scenario down the way. Um, you know, we service a shop that's down the street from us. We do all his drivability diagnostics and electrical stuff, and we'll get cars that come in, and he even complains like, dude, you guys are expensive for diet. He's like, yeah, but you can't even fix it, brother. So,
That's
you
right.
know, $250 for us to check it, but you can't even fix it. Or if I say the word circuit, you're shaking in your pants, man. So it's like, you know, some of these shops that are definitely around, and what I wanted to say about that guy is his mindset is, well, I can get 10 to 15 cars in the shop a day and make a profit of 8 to 500 $800 a day. I'm golden. It's like, damn, man, I could do that with 2 or 3 cars
Yeah.
and go home with a $2,000 profit. Like, as long
Yeah.
as you know how to properly charge, you won't have that issue. But, you know, again, it's just every shop owner or tech becoming a shop owner
Mhm.
typically goes into that spinning wheel of, let me call around, see what everybody else is charging, and I'm going to charge less so I can get more work.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
damn, man.
there was a post there. It was about a belt, and it was like the belt just sheared off the car,
Yeah, I
and the
saw.
dealer quoted like the tensioner, and they said that the tensioner pulley was locked up, and somebody else just put a belt on it and called the dealership a crook and said, you know, uh, like it only needed a belt. Firstly, since we since we've seen EPDM belts come in, right? We don't see them cracked the way that the old belts used to do. So
Right.
yes, I can remember writing up lots of belts and having not pictures, but I'd show the advisor and say, "Hey, this thing is like cracked all over. Looks like a
Yeah.
checkerboard now. It needs a new belt." Customer does. I can totally see how when that keeps driving down the road, eventually that belt just breaks apart.
Yeah, definitely.
But this new EPDM stuff, if you're telling me that like nothing seized up and the car in question, this was like, I don't even think it was a 5-year-old car. If you're telling me that that belt just broke without being contaminated by anything or a tensioner not working or a pulley work, come on. And
Yeah.
here's the thing. If we go and put the belt on it and just the belt, and in 6 months' time, if you work at a dealer and there's something wrong, a squeal, the compressor locks up, whatever it is, guess what? They want the whole damn job for free.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, well, it didn't need a tensioner. I'm sorry. There's lots of people in the parts to business, and I understand the parts business is meant to sell parts, but they used to recommend like when you do a belt, you do the tensioners, 2 tensioners, all the idlers, all the pulleys, you change everything except for the
Yeah.
AC compressor, right? Water pump, all those big stuff, because you don't want to come back, right?
Exactly.
As soon as we start to actually price jobs where we're trying to prevent comebacks, and we always in this industry have somebody going, you're ripping the customer off. You don't need to change that part. That mindset to me is like, so we're not even discussing now the right way to fix something, because you can have multiple ways to fix something. It's whatever. I need the truck to get home. I need the
Right.
truck to get to the next delivery that it has to do, whatever. That's a different scenario. But everybody is immediately pointing the finger going, Oscar, because you quoted, 6 spark plug wires and 6 spark plugs because I had a failed wire, you're a crook. That's what's
Yeah.
wrong with this industry, is because
Yep.
it's like your customers maybe don't want to see you every 3 months for a repair, right?
Yeah.
Lots of shops is like, I only want to come here twice a year. If you think it's going to be to my best interest, my most reliable for the car that we do that now, do it now. That's
Right.
great. But other people look at it and go, you're ripping the customer off. It makes me shake my head. We've for too long have just assumed that the customer doesn't want to spend any money, doesn't have any money, that we've never made money.
Yeah.
And now this new talk that we're trying to have these conversations, everybody's just jumping down one another's throat. And then I know they all do it because they still do it. It's like, what's the quote? Oh, $1,200. I can do that I'll do it for 1,000. They didn't even look up parts. They didn't even look up labor. They're just like, whatever it is, I'm going to make it work at $1,000.
Yeah.
That's how we got to where we are. That's why we're in the mess we're in. Like,
oh, absolutely, man.
She's at home with a broken car calling shops. Yep. I don't want that customer. I don't want it. I don't even want a lot of the customers that if a tow truck was like that rig that we've seen where they tow it into different, I don't want them. Half the stuff that shows up at my lot on the tow truck, I don't want to work on it. We had a 2010 Malibu yesterday towed in. Like engines at a time, Ecotec, engines at a time. Shocking, right?
Yeah.
And I screwed the diag up on it. So that's another time. But so I go through, it's got a failed timing solenoid. Cool. It's got one I tested. It's like that timing solenoid fault. Okay, it needs timing solenoid. The sticker in the window, it's 3,000 kilometers overdue for an oil change. It needs an oil change. Normally when we do the timing solenoids on an Ecotec, because of the way the rings are, the metal that you always find on the screens recommend a hot oil flush. The customer wouldn't buy any of it except for the solenoids. Put the solenoid in, fixes one code, the engine's still not right. So then we pull the valve cover off. It's just like we thought. It's a neglected turd. We take the oil filter out of it. It's full of metal. It's supposed to have 5 liters of oil in the engine. We drain out 3.8. Like, I mean, it was just, and this is a customer that we're trying to do our due diligence with the DVI and the multi-point and they won't pay for a flipping oil change. Yeah. I'm sorry. I would have just rather collected the diag, even though it would have been wrong. I would have rather said, this is the inspection, this is the diag, this is where we go, and then not done the repairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't. Absolutely. How do I stand behind an engine repair if you won't pay me to do an oil change?
Exactly.
And our oil changes are not any more expensive than anyone else.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of people, man, just lack that knowledge of maintenance, or they're just too much of a tight ass to actually get it done. Yeah. Or they listen to the wrong people. There's a lot of stuff we've been seeing. And
I think that's what's going on with this car. It's got new struts in it, new brakes on it. Like, but, gee.
Yeah, we had a Hyundai Kia that came in with a check engine light, and it was for knock sensor code. So first thing we do is check the oil. The thing had no oil in it. We drained about half a quart out of it. Topped it off, and then we did the oil change on it. We rechecked it, retested, nothing there. So we let the customer know, you gotta, do your top offs and keep it going. We see him about 3 months later, comes in, he says, this car's burning way too much oil. I was like, well, first of all, you didn't even know it was burning oil. Yeah. Last time we told you about it. Second of all, how much, right? And he's like, well, in the last month, I killed about 4 quarts. Like, yeah, so it's time for an engine, buddy. So we helped them kind of look it up, and his VIN number did fall into that warranty. Good. So we just connected him to a local Kia dealership. They took care of the engine for him. But it's one of those things where, again, these people are sold that you need an oil change every 10,000 miles. And it's like, dude, by the time you get to 10,000, that shit has no oil. It's like, what do we do there?
I saw a video when it talked about Equinox Ecotex, right? Equinox with Ecotex, and the guy laid it out and he said it's allowable to burn 1 liter of oil every 1,000 miles. It's allowable within the spec from GM. The car holds 5,000 or 5 liters. So in the 5,000 window, it will have consumed all the oil within the engine that you put in and still not be due by the oil life monitor to change the oil. And you think that oil life is what you should follow? Like, it just, and people get so cranked up. Like my buddy, For Boss Me, Rich, right? Our friend, he does great breaking this stuff down. And it's like, but he's only reaching like 2% of the people out there. And then everybody wants to argue with him anyway and go, he got, I only change mine every 10,000. I've had great success. Cool story, bro. Cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everybody. You're lucky, right?
Yeah.
It went 100,000 K, kilometers, thousand. I keep going to the metric thing because I'm Canadian. And I traded in and I had no issues. Fantastic.
Yeah. You got one of the good ones, buddy. Right?
The next person that goes and buys that lump, right, will be putting an engine in it within the first year. And they'll have no remorse for them. There'll be no Maybe they get an extended warranty sold with them that isn't going to be worth the paper that it's printed on. Like, that's just the part that drives me nuts about this whole industry. And
Yeah, man.
the
It's
bona fide
funny this
expert.
year, like this year, sorry to interrupt you, but this year
No.
we've done so many timing chain
Yeah.
jobs. It's unreal.
Yeah.
And after the fact, we always talk to the customers like, dude, you need to change your oil change intervals.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, you got all these keyboard experts and all these keyboard warriors all over online. And that's what these people are kind of turning to because they feel that
Mhm.
mechanics are thieves. But in reality, when you go check out some of these forums or a Google or a Reddit or whatever,
Yeah.
some of these guys have zero freaking clue about what they're talking about. A lot of these older, some like we call them old farts. I consider myself an old fart. Still talk about, well, as a car gets older, you want to go into a heavier weight oil. It's like, no, you fucking don't.
No.
Especially with like VVT or variable valve timing, man. But some of these guys still live by that. It's freaking crazy.
But I call it the grandpa analogies, right? It's the grandpa's advice of what they used to do.
Yeah.
I can remember a long time ago, God bless him, when my mom and my stepdad first got together. My mom was driving like a 1989 Buick Century with like a V6.
Oh,
A long time ago.
classic.
I'm old too, right? Like I'm damn near 50. So, and it was like it needed a radiator. Cool. So I tell mom it needs a radiator and I get a radiator for it and I put it in the car. And he said to me, well, did you put a new rad cap on it? I said, of course I put a new rad cap on it. Like it comes with the radiator. Oh, you should never put a brand new rad cap on a recondition or any new rad. Like, because when they used to recore rads back in the day, if the rad cap was new, they would just start to leak. They couldn't keep the, and I'm like, and it drove me nuts because here I was already working in the industry and my mom was taking the advice of this person,
Right.
Versus me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because something in 1940 that might have had a grain of truth to it, now it still is relevant in almost 2000. He
Yeah.
was the same person that, oh, it's leaking coolant. Put an egg in the radiator, put carnation condensed milk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would work.
Right.
But like, there's still people on the internet that are saying this. Here's another story that will make you laugh. So 3 weeks ago, this girl posts on my local community forum and she's like, her car will only run for about 10 minutes and then it stalls out and she has to boost it again, right? We know what's going on. It's probably an alternator, whatever problem. Cool story.
Typical.
Somebody opens their big mouth online and it says, well, when it's running, just disconnect the battery. And if it stays running, the battery's okay. If it doesn't, or whatever, that old analogy, what we used to do with the alternator.
Yep.
And I'm like, please do not
Do not
that.
do that.
Do not do that under any situation. That is like, that's not advice you would give to anybody on anything built after points were around. Like, come on.
Yep.
And this guy gets in there and he just like, listen, I've been doing it for years, son. Like I've worked on the farm my whole, like he's literally typing this bullshit out to me. I've been doing it since I was a kid. I'm older than you. And I said to him, so me being the jerk that I am, I go creep his profile. He's got like a 2019 Chevy truck in the driveway. And I said, all right, hot shot. Here's what I want you to do. You go out to do that to your truck right now and film it. And I said, I'll pay you $100 to do it.
Yeah.
And he would not do it. And he would not. And Oscar, for 2 days, I went at this guy hard. Go ahead. Where's this video? Let me see it. And he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, of course not.
Next time, if you don't know what you're talking about online, shut your mouth and don't say anything. Because I said the misinformation that's out there, I'm getting worked up now just talking about this. The misinformation thing is what is the biggest part of our obstacle in the industry, bar none, right? We see the guys, social media creators, contents, guys like in your position, my position. We're seeing it all the time. We're seeing it with wrenches they're discussing right now. Like, I mean,
that's a good one.
Misinformation is we should all be doing more to try and get ahead of that. We see it, and it's, I keep talking all the time. When people make content for the sake of content and not actually like, good, accurate stuff, I have a big problem with it. It doesn't matter if Paul Danner put a video out tomorrow, God bless Paul, and it was like a complete false thing, I'd be the first to call him out. And I think, is this April Fool's, Paul? What are you doing, right? Paul is that type of guy where when he would pull it. If it was something wrong, he would pull it. But people
Absolutely,
don't
yeah.
leave it up there because of the algorithm thing. That just drives me. Oh, I get mad when I just start to think about it. Like, it just, you're not helping the industry by leaving the misinformation out there, is my point.
Absolutely, right? Man. It's actually hurting it even more. And hurting it not only from a technical standpoint, from a shop standpoint, shop owner standpoint, like it hurts it as an entire whole, because that's going to affect everything, and it's going to trickle all the way down. And it sucks. But as you were saying, you know, us as shop owners, we pick and choose our battles, right? We pick which customer. We try our best to make sure we pre-qualify them to make sure that they're our type of client before we put our foot in our mouth. Unlike some shops that, you know, you got a car with some wheels, bring it in, we'll take it. You know, it's like that's not how it should be. But, you know, it's one of those deals. We had a car that was in here in the shop maybe about 2 weeks ago. It went to 2 separate shops before us. First shop, all they did was recharge refrigerant. AC worked for 2 days, left, didn't work again. They went to another shop. Second shop did the same thing, just recharged it and shipped it, and then it ended up in our lap. Car gets there, and we pressure check, found it, you know, evaporator was leaking. We call the customer, show her the video, show her the pictures. And the craziest part, man, is she got mad at us.
Yeah.
And she's like, how can it be that? The other guys just put refrigerant in and it worked. It's like, it worked for 2 days. Like, this is a sealed system. If there's no refrigerant in it, there's a leak, you know? And finally, we were able to actually get through to her where she understood where we were coming from. It was more that she was upset that these other 2 shops just kind of took advantage of her. And, you know, I got to the point where I was like, well, you should call them and try to get your money back, you know, for that service. Because one, that's illegal according to, you know, our regulations here. And then 2, in California, we have to follow a 16-point checklist anytime we service an air conditioning system.
Same here.
And what's funny is, you know, I've taught classes all throughout US and here in California. Particularly when I teach in California, I bring this stuff up because most people don't know about it. And I taught a class up north last year, and when I talked about it, everybody's like, nah. Like, yeah, if you don't follow this procedure, you're violating California Business and Profession Code simply because you did not follow the 16-point checklist before you service the vehicle. Right. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why we charge more when we do that, because we go through it, and that's how we usually find the leaks anyway. So, you know, and then we show that to the customer, and they, a lot of times they'll be like, all right, that makes more sense of why you're charging more, right? Versus all these guys are, oh, I'm just going to do a top off of what? You know, if you need to top off your refrigerant, you got a leak, buddy, you know, and people, it's just mind boggling, man. Like how some of these guys just are okay with that. Or you see the guy that's posting on Facebook Marketplace with his little can that he bought.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that. Or the guys all over, the mobile guys all over social media. Yeah. They're run over there with cans from the zone and and you know, hook it up to the thing and turn the can upside down and you know, collect $100 and the customer's happy.
Yep. Oh yeah, man.
You as a business, if you're actually going to use the real refrigerant, look at the leaps and hurdles we have to go over to be able to do it. It's the same up here. It's like, you know, I the whole idea that we even have to like put our machines at risk to suck some of these systems down because you don't know what's in them, right? It's ridiculous because that stuff can legally be sold to be used as that. Like, it just drives me nuts. Some propane blend with whatever else stuff. They still call it 134, but it's not 134. It says it's 134 in the can. Yeah, I know. That's closer to the part number than what it is chemically, but whatever, right? But the fact that we have to just, you or I, like, don't bother. For us, when we do a repair, there's supposed to be then a tag that you put in a little bag and tape it somewhere under the hood of the car that shows that the record that if somebody wanted to go and go, oh, what was the last AC repair? They should be able to open up that little sealed bag, slit it open, look at it. There's my my registration number, my name, then shows in a little 3 sentences, what did I do to the car last time? Leak
Oh,
check,
okay.
that's all supposed to be done. I'd be lying if I said that like every shop that I've ever worked at, we did that.
Right.
Wouldn't bother to do that. You go to the parts counter at the dealership and they go, I don't have any of them. What are you going to do? Go put your hand up and go, I can't do this evap job because I don't have a sticker to put on the. No, you're going to do the damn evap job.
Hell yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's by law, they can come in and go, you didn't tag that with your certification showing that you're legally allowed to touch it, even though I can call the parts store and I can buy refrigerant, the actual real refrigerant, and they never ask me for my number or anyone
Really?
else's. It's on file, but they never ask. So
Yeah.
I can buy it, and then whatever I do with it after the fact is nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right? The shop down the street that doesn't have anybody to buy it from. And let's be real, like if I walk into the shop tomorrow and want to buy it and I just walk in and I don't work for a shop and just like, yeah, I got an AC job, I'd like to actually buy like a, cylinder to charge my own car, they'll sell it to me. No problem.
Yeah. It's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AC is one of those things it's another one of those thing in the industry where I just shake my head and go, we're so missing the boat on what we really should be doing.
Yeah.
To look after our customers. The leaps in do I think that AC should be pumped into a system that we know is leaking? No, it shouldn't. It should be fixed.
No, exactly.
In the greater scheme of things, do I think it actually has an effect on ice flows and polar bears and penguins, for the global warming? I'm not sure. I'm not smart enough to say. If you told me all of a sudden that, it probably doesn't, I probably would agree with you. It probably doesn't. But we're more regulated with how we treat air conditioning and emissions than we are in what can legally drive up and down the roads in terms of brakes and tires. That's been
scary.
so stupid to me for the 25 years that I've been turning wrenches. It's been so dumb. I have to go and certify on air conditioning. And yet, nobody has ever sat me down and said, this is how you have to do a brake job and it has to be done this way before you can actually start to call yourself a mechanic. It's so ridiculous to me. So ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like here with us, since I'm a brake and lamp adjuster, I've only had to do it once, but if the car is so bad out of shape and they don't want to fix it, then the customer has to tow it, or I have to call it into our it's called California Highway Patrol, which is kind of like our troopers. So we have to call it in, and then they get stopped, picked up, and the car gets impounded for being unsafe. That's a violation of vehicle code. Right. And dude, some of the cars we get in here, there was one car in particular that we were fucking pissed, man. So this lady rolls up in a minivan. She has her daughter in the back in a car seat. This baby's maybe 1 or 2 years old max, and airbags are still hanging from the dash, steering column. Like the car was literally like in an accident. They just put some mascara on it and sold it to her. She's driving around with her kid in there with it like that. Once we do the inspection, this thing needs brakes, suspension, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And when I go tell her about it, she gets furious, right? Yeah. And we're like, well, first of all, whoever sold this to you, like took advantage of you. It's not me. Second of all, there's no way in hell I would have let you, if you were my daughter, granddaughter, whoever you are, drive with this car with that child in the back. Yeah. Because you're putting both of yourselves in danger, plus everybody around you in danger based off of how this car is in its current state. And she's like, well, I'm going to drive it like that. I'm like, no, you're not. You're either going to tow it out of here on a dolly or I got to call it in. And she's like, well, I'm taking it. Nope. She's like, I'll sign something. That won't hold up in court. I'm the expert. I can't let you leave. And so sure enough, she said, oh, I'm going to take it. Cool. I'm sorry, but I have to do this. I called it in, and I don't know what ended up happening afterwards, but I did my part. Because, if something were to happen to her kid down the way where the brakes failed or that ball joint popped out, loses control and smacks into a wall and something happens to her and the baby, I'm responsible because I'm the last one who touched it. And it's just crazy, man, how some shops would much rather just collect that $100, $200 for that inspection, sign it off, and then send it down its way. That's mind boggling.
That's Oscar Gomez on the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. Wrapping up this week's episode, we'll put a pin in the conversation and wrap it up next week. Much more to come from Oscar and Jeff. Great stuff next week. Be sure to check out that podcast when it comes out. That's next week on the Jaded Mechanic.
Hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASA group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10 millimeter, and we'll see you all again next time.